Let's talk about why parents talk about their children in toxic families. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones, and be sure to go back and watch the video that I stitched with this, but I have been working with adult children of toxic families for several years, and I have some theories about why I feel like adult parents talk about their children. The first theory would be that a lot of parents don't like their children, or they look at their children as like inconveniences. And so when you don't like someone, and if you sort of zoom out and you think about it from like, maybe a junior high school or high school context, you kind of have like mean girls or mean guys over in the corner sort of talking about the person that they're bullying, right? Or that they're ostracizing. The same concept can be applicable to toxic families where parents don't necessarily like their children, or they view their children as spectacles to be talked about, right? And that is a form of bullying in the context. And so they will talk junk about their children to their friends and sort of ostracize their children, belittle them, put them in their place, make them feel not heard, not seen as a human being. So I think that's one theory, that you outright don't like their children, or they view their children as an inconvenience, or their children were put there to be some sort of entertainment for them. The second theory that I also have is that there's a lot of parents out there that actually don't know how to relate to their children, how to see them as a human being. So they never get down on their child's level. They're not attuned emotionally to their child's feelings. So they don't embrace their children as children. They kind of look at them as like a threatening adult, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of people out there who are abusive that look at their child as like another adult. And I know that sounds strange, but I've worked with pathological personalities over the years, and a lot of times there is a fixed delusion or a fixed paranoia around like another person, including children, that their child was talking about me, or my child didn't like me, or my child talked back to me, or she was disrespectful to me, so therefore I must also retaliate, right? So they don't know how to relate to children. They're only used to relating to dysfunctional adult, and they see their child as a threat, and that kind of that becomes inclusive into number one as well. But this is a little bit different, is that a child is perceived as like another threatening adult in the home, and someone that that parent views them as someone that they must attack first before they get a chance to do anything to them. So it's always about obtaining the upper hand and keeping a child in their place, because they perceive their child to be a threat and someone that they have to get over on first before their child gets a hold of them, gets over on them, if that makes sense. This is also why you may see parents competing with their children. And so what that looks like is a mother who may get jealous over her daughter's figure, right? If that mother has a boyfriend, they may feel like, they become paranoid about their daughter flaunting their figure in front of their boyfriend, or a dad may become competitive towards his son, right, and try to steal his son's girlfriend away, right, because he views his son, his child as another competitive male in the house. And men also do this too when they become competitive with children, and they're like, why are you feeding the children first? Why are you taking care of them first? You need to be looking to me. And people will become jealous over their children, if that makes sense. The third reason as to why I think toxic parents do this with their children, and where they make their child a scapegoat, they make their child the spectacle. Is you think about the purpose of a spectacle. A spectacle is meant to entertain, right? But the whole point of doing that is to create a diversion. And I think they do this very well in like politics, right? Where they get people in an uproar over something else, so that it takes the eyes off of them and watching what's going on behind the scenes in politics. So a lot of times in politics, when there's like this big thing that's going on that people are really focusing about, the news is yammering on about, there's usually something much more insidious going on behind the scenes. And the same thing can be said for toxic families, where it's like, okay, if I don't know how to bond with another adult, I don't know how to bond and have a healthy conversation with an adult, I also don't want to talk about me, which is what people would normally do when they get together with friends and or peers. They talk about themselves and their lives and what's going on. They don't want to do that. And so a way of keeping people at an arm's distance and have them not focus on, maybe perhaps what poor parenting practices or other behavior that may be questionable, is that they push their child out to be the spectacle, the conversation piece, the thing to be laughed at, so that they never have to focus on sharing anything about themselves, and they don't do any real work or bring any real substance to a relationship. And a lot of times the way they move in friendships is very toxic as well. And so while they kind of keep their friends entertained with gossip and slander and bad things about their children, those same toxic adults will be doing other things to undermine the friendships as well. If you notice people who if you notice adults that bond with other adults by gossiping and trash talking and things like that, those aren't usually friendships that last the test of time. And also, and one of the reasons is because the very same hatred that they spew and the things that they sort of degrade and things like that, their viewpoints will eventually play out in real time in the friendship. If you give it time, it'll actually play out. And so I think it's a diversion, a distraction, and it deters you from really looking at me, and it deters me from having to really talk about myself and what my flaws are. And therefore you can't ever really grow in a friendship. You can't ever have true intimacy or true vulnerability in a friendship, because you're too busy cutting down other people, and that distracts from what's going on in your life. And oftentimes the people that are talking like that about someone else, their life isn't very pretty, and they usually don't have a lot of good things going on. And so that's their way of projecting onto their children, and making their children seem bad. And if you remember before, I've said in a post before, a lot of times what the negativity that people will spew out about you will tell you a lot about them and what their challenges have been in life. So for example, if you're spewing about your child being overweight, for example, a lot of times that parent that is that's zeroing in on a child being overweight and sort of cutting that child down and dragging that child through the mud, weight is often something that they have struggled with or have been bullied about before and things like that. So a projection is really something that is under the unconscious. Is usually an internal struggle or something that people envy about another person. And so it's a diversion. Hope that helps.